So this is the Central Oregon Community College Board meeting for February 10th, 2021. This is Alan Unger, Vice Chair, sitting in for Erica Scavold. I'll call this meeting to order, and I'll first read the Native Lands Acknowledgement. The purpose of this is to acknowledge someone. To acknowledge someone is to say, I see you, you are significant. The purpose of a land acknowledgement is to recognize and pay respect for the original inhabitants of a specific region. It is an opportunity to express gratitude, appreciation. Central Oregon Community College would like to acknowledge that the beautiful land our campuses reside on are the original homeland of the Wasco and Warm Springs people. They ceded this land to the United States government in Treaty of 1855. The Paiute people were forcibly moved to the Warm Springs Indian Reservation starting in 1879. It is also important to note that the Klamath Trail ran north through this region to the Great Celilo Falls trading grounds, and the Klamath tribes claim it as their own. Descendants of these original people are thriving members of our communities today. We acknowledge and thank the original stewards of this land. With that, could you do a roll call, Jen, of members and guests?
Absolutely. Noting for the record that Erica Scavold is on maternity leave and Laura Kraska Cooper will be joining us late today, starting the roll call with Alan Unger.
Yes.
Joe Krenowitz.
Yes.
Bruce Abernethy.
Yes.
Oliver Tatum.
Yes.
Jim Clinton.
Yes.
Alicia Moore.
Here.
Lori Chesley. You're muted, Lori, but we see you.
I'm off to a great start. Here.
Zach Boone.
Here.
Dave Jonah.
Here.
Laura Bomey.
Here.
Betsy Julian.
Here.
Matt McCoy.
Here.
Kathleen Knutson.
Here.
Michael Fisher. Peter McCaffrey.
Here.
Julie Downing.
Here.
Charla Andreessen.
Here.
Shauna Berry.
Here.
Paul Taylor.
Here.
Dina Cook.
Here.
And Jen Kovitz present. Thank you.
Michael
Great.
Fisher's here.
So we've established a quorum. Is there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, I'd like to move for a change. Under old business, item number 4, the board policy review, I would like to move that to information items. And there should be 2 items in there. One is the document that Dina sent out comparing our retreat outcomes to policy and whether I saw alignment there. This document is for the members of the board to review. And should you see anything that you want to review to the policy review committee, that's your prerogative. There's no real need for us to discuss it tonight. The other item is a proposed revision to governance policy number 5, board committee principles. This is something that was drafted by Laura, and the policy review committee reviewed it and felt that it was time to submit it to the full board. Because this is a first reading, according to current policy, it is an information item for the board to review at this meeting, and we will then vote on it next meeting.
Do we have first and second readings on these?
Yes, according to our current policy, they require a first and a second reading.
Are you proposing a first reading and then we come back with discussion and a proposed second reading or not?
I am.
Okay. With that item though, Laura is late. She has another commitment and she will be on, and I've told her I would hold that discussion for that item until she's on. So,
Okay.
but that's going to stay in old business, and that the retreat item is going to be informational.
According to our policy, the first reading
Is
is
that
an
right, Oliver?
information item. I think you broke, you or I broke up there. The way the policy currently reads is the first reading is an information item. So that's why I'm suggesting that we move it to that section of the agenda.
Okay. Is that agreed to by the board? It's hearing nothing, I assume it is. I'm still going to hold it till Laura gets on. So I'll bring that up as an informational item when she's on board, and we can discuss it then.
Alan,
Any
might
other changes?
I also suggest, since Laura is going to recuse herself from this discussion anyway, and Peter is here waiting, that we move the outcrop subdivision update to earlier in the meeting?
I'm okay with that. Is the board okay with that? Hearing,
I
seeing
agree.
no objections, let's do that too. We'll put it just up at the old business, the top of it. Okay, with that, is there any public comment, Jen?
There's no public comment today.
Okay. We usually don't have public comment. We should talk about why, but we have it on the agenda for people to bring items if they want. So with that, consent agenda, anybody have any changes or anything they want to bring up on the minutes? Do I have a motion?
I'll
I
move.
so moved.
Okay, I'll second.
Joe moved and Oliver seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Say nay. Anybody abstain? The consent agenda is passed. We'll go to informational items. First one is the financial statement. Ms. Knudsen.
Hi, any questions for the regarding the financial statements?
Good.
All right,
We'll
thank
go
you.
on to anything on the new hires report? Anybody want to discuss? Then we'll go to old business. Our first item now will be the outcrop subdivision update. Matt McCoy, you want to start this?
I'd be happy to. Thank you, Alan. This is a continuation of providing the board with the information and the deeper background on the outcrop subdivision and the update of the status between last board meeting, this board meeting. And you see that we have Peter McCaffrey here from William Smith Properties, Inc. To provide the update from the WISP perspective. Peter, if you would provide that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Certainly. Thank you. I appreciate being on the board meeting again this month, so thank you for the time. Last week, I sent a memo to the board updating on our progress, and so my update tonight will be a little bit redundant from that memo. Planning to cover that and then answer any questions that you might have. Following last month's board meeting, we got the direction to proceed with selling the lots for the first phase of the outcrop subdivision, unless circumstances change and leasing those lots becomes a better outcome. Following that meeting, we met with Curtis Homes. Curtis Homes is the home builder that we've worked with since the inception of this project. And fortunately, they were very interested in remaining fully involved in this phase of the project and buying the lots. They proposed to us a structure which would include seller financing to purchase lots 2 through 16. And I'll cover lot 1 in just a moment. But the terms we find acceptable. The price is right in line with what we proposed last month. A note on that is those prices are about 15 to 20% higher than comparable lot sales in Discovery West that have happened recently. So we do believe it's at top of the market. I think in selling all the lots together, there might be concern that there's a bulk discount involved, but want to communicate that there's not. You know, we feel that this is a good price. With seller financing, and what would be included in that is an escalating interest rate that would make sure that Curtis Homes builds and closes on these homes in a timely fashion. It also will deliver more income than I had indicated in the last month's board meeting. Just means that there will be more income from the project, which is a good thing. And again, it incentivizes Curtis Homes to work diligently to complete the project. One additional item that was in the memo was addressing lot number 1. For those not familiar, lot number 1 is a lot that backs up to the rock outcropping. And we have tried very hard to preserve this rock outcropping in the project. It's a very beautiful feature on the site, and the intent is for it to be a public amenity to the residents of this subdivision. The lot itself is small to begin with, and it's not very deep. It's wide and it's not as deep. And part of the rock outcropping is actually in the boundaries of this lot. And so it makes it a challenge to build on. It can only host a smaller home. And the concern is that a future owner of that home might decide that they could fence off part of the rock outcropping or disturb the rock outcropping, or perhaps police the use of it and prevent it from being enjoyed as a public amenity. So a creative solution on this is that Williamsworth Properties would purchase this lot, and we'd get an appraisal to support that purchase price, and we would build a rental property, and then we can make sure that the improvements being constructed wouldn't disturb the rock outcropping. And also we would have a resident of that rental to be able to inform us if there's ever issues or maintenance that needs to be tended to, which is doubtful. I mean, it's a geological feature, but I think that there's a benefit to us having closer eyes on that feature of the project. So I'd like to pause there. Are there questions so far? Oliver?
Yes, I'm curious why you would want to buy this lot and make it a rental property as opposed to just leaving it to us to continue to hold in as a public.
A park.
Yeah.
The rock outcropping would be a public park, and there'd be a trail that would go through there as well. There would not. We've built utilities that serve the site, so there are costs associated with that lot existing, and there wouldn't be proceeds from a sale of that lot.
So if I may add to that, Peter, you and I had talked about this because I'd asked about holding that lot, and what actually I think what you're doing is preserving the outcrop as a positive feature that enhances both phase 1 and phase 2 and maintains the higher value of the surrounding lots. And I did not understand that at the very beginning of it.
If you'd like, I can share my screen if you'd like to look at the layout of the lot. Pardon me for a moment. Are you seeing the rock outcropping or the board packet?
We're seeing the board packet.
The agenda.
Here, I'm a little bit confused, so maybe you said this, and I apologize if I lost it. But so I totally, the first lot is not going to be developed like the other 15 lots, but then you use the word developed as a rental or held off the market. I mean, what is the long-term intent for that? To keep it as open space and basically sort of, in essence, eat the potential proceeds on that because it boosts the proceeds on the other lots, or is it going to be developed at some point?
Thank you for the question, Bruce. I think that was unclear. So lot 1, which hopefully you all can see right now that my mouse is hovering over, is this lot. And you can see that there's a large corner of the rock outcropping indicated by this line that's in the backyard of that property. Our intent would be to build a small rental home that would sit inside of the lot, but that would not disturb the actual rock outcropping. And the fence related to this property wouldn't be trying to blaze a trail through the actual outcropping. It would be, in front of it here. in essence, preserving that corner of the rock outcropping.
Thank you.
I can't quite read that. What is the road or the trail that goes around the?
This right here was
Yeah.
previously an emergency vehicle access road. So if you were driving in this area and this connection also didn't exist, an emergency vehicle could actually get through there. And in fact, there was a swing gate and a curb cut on Mount Washington. Part of the requirements from the city in developing and recording the plat for our subdivision was turning this into a multi-use path. So it is now, it meets the Bend Parks and Rec aggregate trail standards. So it looks, feels, and functions like a crushed gravel multi-use path. And if I'm guessing, the second phase of the project, when lots over here were recorded, will still feature this path coming through, and then there will likely be roadways that come, and so this path would connect with sidewalks and road. But this, again, the rock outcropping would be preserved.
Peter, this is Jim.
Hi, Jim.
Why don't you do a lot line adjustment?
We could also sell the lot. I mean, Williamson Properties doesn't have to own it. I don't know how long a lot line adjustment takes. Even if we did a lot line adjustment, I think there's still probably a benefit to the opportunity for William Smith Properties to be able to monitor and again make sure that this remains public, open, and enjoyed by the residents.
Can I ask what may be a stupid question, but could the college build the house? Or could we buy the house, continue to own the land, and use that as for our visiting scholars?
Oliver, that's not a stupid question. It's there's a conversation taking place separate from this particular lot about something similar to that. And so that concept is being considered.
Okay.
You may recall that we own a lot on the northeastern edge of our main campus here.
Mhm.
And that's also a possibility for something like a visiting scholar or even a college used facility. So it's not a silly question, it's actually a timely question.
If I may, this discussion is new to me. And I think that obviously it's the board's decision, but I think that we ought to be mindful of the optics of that and all of the other various needs that we have at the college. And so I would just add that as a comment for consideration if this is something we choose to consider further.
Sure. I think if we had someone like Dr. Cobb, who was our speaker at the Season of Nonviolence event, if he had been able to come out to Bend, what a nice way to host him, to put him up at this house right here on this outcrop that we have preserved after developing this land in a way to generate revenue for the college. I don't know. I'm just, rather than turning it into a rental property, but I'm speaking off the cuff, so.
So what
This is
if we,
Peter and, sorry, Alan, go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, what if we move forward with the agreement with the caveat that this one lot, since it stays within the control of WISP or ourselves, we have further discussion on it and maybe make a more definitive answer next board meeting? But we go ahead with the agreement with the rest with Curtis Homes?
I'm fine with that, Alan. I mean, from my perspective, I think that's the most important thing, is to move forward on those other lots that will be sold. And whether it's a hold lot line adjustment, rental, et cetera, I think there's not necessarily a rush on that. So I'm fine with what.
This is Joe Krenowitz. I concur with that. I'm not a real fan of the college getting into rental business and maintenance of residential homes and landscaping and all that. We have enough challenges with our current commercial college taking care of landscape and snow removal and all the things that goes on when you own property. I'm fine with an open conversation at a later time or an appropriate time, but my feeling is we ought to be doggone good at being a community college relative to being in the rental business.
Okay, so Peter, why don't you go forward with your presentation, and just know that the board with this one small lot still wants to kind of have more comment and discussion on it.
That works. Thank you. Oh, sorry, let me stop sharing. So the last point that I was going to cover is just the mechanics then of selling the lots. And what we recommended in the memo, which I'll recap here, is that we think it'll be most efficient and probably helpful from an administrative standpoint for the college that the lots transfer to William Smith Properties subject to the proposal that we just mentioned and selling it to Curtis Homes for all the terms that we've agreed to that would be further outlined in a development agreement to specify all of that. And then William Smith Properties would be able to develop, record, manage the CCNRs and the HOA without having to get the college involved with each step of that along the way. And also, which would be further defined, which I mentioned in the memo, which would be further defined in the amendment to the development agreement, is spelling out the split of income as it's realized on the sale of the lots. In this case, it would be as Curtis Homes is paying down on the principal balance of the sale price, and whatever we decide with lot one, subject to the selling that. And what we've proposed is that the first 200,000, which represents the base return on the 2010 appraisal, goes to COCC as opposed to that amount on each individual lot. I think it'll be just easier from an administrative standpoint. As background, the whole 12 acres, the original appraisal was 690,000. If you take this land, I think it's closer to 170 or 180, but rounding up to 200 feels like fair, clean, and easy way to do that. After that first 200,000 has been directed to COCC, then the remaining proceeds would be split between COCC and William Smith Properties, proportionate to all Campus Village expenses, as opposed to just the outcrop subdivision expenses. And this is a benefit for COCC because a large majority of COCC's costs, as I understand, were on Village Core work around the Culinary Institute. So this accelerates recovery of expenses from that side of the project. And that after expenses are recovered, which my forecast is that all expenses by COCC and WISPU for all Campus Village related activities would be recovered in this phase, and that proceeds from that point would be split 50-50. And we think that this mirrors the economics that were outlined in the development agreement for ground leases. I think it provides for the same outcome as would have been achieved if ground leasing the lots. I know there might be questions on that or on any other items, but that concludes my update, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? I'm supportive of moving forward with this agreement. You know, when we, as with our partnership with WISPY, have engaged other outside people like Curtis Homes, we need to be good businessmen and move forward and make sure we're doing our part. I see this as doing that. One item we haven't talked about is this money development money or operational money. I'm hoping that that question be looked at in the real estate committee and that we have that discussion at a future board meeting. So is there anything else anybody wants to know about this proposal? So next board meeting, we'll have an agreement that we'll review that we will vote on.
Alan, actually, you've already authorized entering into the agreement, and we're now working through legal counsel on dotting the i's and crossing the t's.
Is there future board action on this item?
It's not required.
Okay. Is that the board comfortable with that? I am. I think we're moving forward with a good partnership.
This is Jim. I would like to see an agreement contract before I vote on whether the college should agree to it or not.
Well, I think we already agreed to it at our last meeting. That was the vote that we took.
Well,
So
we agreed in principle, but we didn't see it in any contract.
We certainly can bring it back, but the motion was to authorize the president or her designee to enter into an agreement. And the outline of the agreement, the details is what was provided last month and this month by Peter. I say that the language is being refined with legal counsel, but it's what you've had in front of you.
I think it is better procedure for the board to see an agreement, see a contract before it signs it, before it agrees to go ahead with it. I'm not questioning anybody's intentions. It's just, I think, poor practice to not to agree to a contract that you haven't seen.
I hear what you're saying, Jim. And how about we move forward with continue to put the agreement together, and that we run it past you and have a discussion, and then we see where that goes and kind of determine whether we need to have a little more discussion or not.
Can I ask you a question? Matt, help me understand from a precedent perspective. I mean, I remember on it seems to me not only COCC, but certainly on city council, we authorize the chief executive to enter into agreements all the time. And that, like you said, that is really considered approving something. I mean, in essence, you've delegated that authority from the board level down to the staff level. So what Jim is asking would be then to kind of bring it back up to the board level to make that decision. Is that doesn't seem to me that's usually what we do, or help refresh my memory.
I think traditionally it's been the authorization, and I know that there have been some contracts that have been brought to the board, grants, for instance, which is entering into a contract, and when they have been available and ready. But there's also been often the approval authorizing the president on behalf of the college or designee.
So I see us having board consensus. I also see Jim would like to read the contract. I think we're moving forward, but let's recognize that Jim wants to read the contract.
Does WISP have any, does that cause a delay to moving forward, or is that, throw a monkey wrench in things?
What I think is that we will draft and sign a purchase and sale agreement with Curtis Homes that is subject to getting all of the approvals needed from the college. And I think that and I don't know this, but I think that will allow them to be able to market, advertise, and really get into design work so that they can proceed with selling these lots and therefore closing on the lots, so that the sale is moving forward, which I think is what everyone wants. The development agreements we've drafted, and I can't think it would add that much more time for you all to review. If it was going to be till next board meeting to sign, that would probably delay construction and delay closing. Did that answer your question, Bruce?
It did. I mean, it sounds to me like there actually is a consequence to delaying this for another month. So I guess, I mean, certainly being cognizant of where Jim is coming from, I'm not really supportive of waiting, but if the rest of the board wants to wait, I can certainly be outvoted.
I agree with you, Bruce. I think we had our vote last meeting and we authorized the sale of this land. My discomfort remains what we're going to do with these funds, which I think has new urgency considering the speed with which this sale is moving forward. And I agree with Alan that we really need to have a conversation, because my sense is that the members of the board have some differing ideas on how we use this money.
I think we need to have a discussion on the money. It's just a good principle to do that. And we haven't had an opportunity to look at development funds before. I wasn't proposing that we slow the process down or that we revote or anything. I was just wanting to make sure Jim could read the contract. And I didn't think I was slowing anything down.
Well, I appreciate that, Alan. I think, just to repeat what I've been saying, is that this project has been going on for a long time under the assumption that the college would remain owner of this land. And so changing to selling the land is a major change. And I think it's the responsibility of the board to review the terms in detail of when it is choosing to, in a situation where it is choosing to sell the land rather than lease the land. It's an added responsibility when you're selling what is essentially land held in trust for the public. And, legally, we can just ask the president to do all of this stuff, but it just seems to me better practice, because sale of publicly trusted land should meet a higher standard. And that higher standard involves some more review by the board of an actual contract to sell.
Were these things that were talked about and discussed in the real estate committee? At least I would think the real estate committee has certainly had a couple more months to mull it over than the rest of the board members who aren't on that committee.
Well, the discussion at the real estate committee had to do with, hey, these lots are not selling. We have an opportunity to sell the lots. And so in principle, everybody agreed, yeah, we ought to go forward and look at the advantages and disadvantages of selling the lots. At that time, there was not a discussion that I remember of one entity buying all of the lots, for example. So that was a change. It went from a discussion in the real estate committee of, in principle, should we consider selling instead of leasing because nobody is falling for the lease deal. And so we all said yes. Subsequent to that, the question of, or the opportunity to sell all the lots at once came forward. So that's fine, it's fine. The board has decided that's what it wants to do. I'm just saying that we ought to actually see the contract.
This is Joe Kronowitz. I'm on the real estate board, and I've been privy to the project ever since I came on board as a board member. And this is our third pivot and change up to actually get something moving on that property, turn it into a revenue. Unfortunately, the lease is not working. The market will tell you what they want. If you want a boat that has 2 engines on it, sometimes that will be a great thing. But if all you can afford or what all you really truly need is one boat with one engine, run with it. The market has told us they're not interested on a lease. And I respect your concern with the land trust, Jim. The Wispy group has been with us continuously with the 3 change-ups that we've had. I'm not a person who is privy to or the capacity to look at legalese, the contracts. That's why we have our administration under Lori, as well as our attorneys, and a relationship that we have with Wispy. I can't imagine anyone else could be more accommodating to the COCC than they have over the almost a decade, probably, or more. This is not my wheelhouse. We look at policy, we look at the direction we want to take the school, what we need to do, what we need to accomplish. And I'm fine with saying, let's run this contract, sign off on it, and we can identify where we want to take the funds once we start receiving them. There's a process for that, but I'm not interested. I don't think we'd gain any incremental advantage to hold up this contract and this agreement to go forward tonight.
Yeah, just for the record, I'm not recommending that there's any holdup. And let me just try one more argument.
But Jim, you are. If we can't actually go forward, and Peter pointed out that he has to go back to Curtis that says it's conditional on, conditional on the board finally signing off on it, then it does delay a whole month.
I'm not asking that the board needs a meeting to sign off on it. I'm asking that the purchase and sale agreement, the development contract between the 3 parties here is in a written form that we can take a look at. And the last argument I would make is that this property is owned by COCC. So what does that actually mean? That means that the board of directors owns the property. So I'm considering my role on the board exactly as if I owned this property. Would I agree to sell it without seeing the conditions under which it's being sold? No, I would not. Therefore, I don't think the board should agree to sell it without seeing the contract. No other owner of property would agree to sell property without seeing a contract.
That's not true, Jim. I mean, like I just pointed out,
Really?
COCC, the city do that. They do that all the time. They authorize staff to enter into agreements, and the contract may or may not come back to them. I mean, I think what's been pointed out is it's been done both ways. So it doesn't have to be done the way that you're describing, and it doesn't have to be done the way that I'm describing. But your point that the board is the entity that has the final say, that's not accurate. I mean, there are lots of instances where that authority is delegated to the appropriate chief executive of the organization, and the contract does not come back before the board, or certainly not before it's officially considered approved. That's my only point.
Yeah, I think I don't disagree with your point at all. I would just say that it's simply my opinion that as the owners of the property, the board should review the conditions under which it is being sold. It's a philosophy of governance question for me. And it's just my opinion that that's a better way to go. I totally understand that the board can authorize the president to enter into pretty much any and all contracts. In which case, why would you even have a board if you take that argument to its extreme? So assuming that the board has some role here, I think a legitimate role in my opinion, is to take a look at the contract before it gets executed. Just my opinion.
So if I may, Jim, are the terms that Peter has provided in the memorandum, because those are the terms that would be incorporated into the agreement. Are you wanting something other that you'd like to see the technical writing that incorporates those terms? Because I think that's what Peter was providing, is the terms that you're talking about.
Yeah, I guess one could say that at this point we have an MOU. we have a memorandum of understanding between the parties on what everyone intends to do. It's just that when such a thing gets executed as a contract, the parties should have a chance, if they desire, to check it out before it actually gets executed. There's things can change in the translation between an MOU and an actual contract. And I'm not placing this burden on anybody else. I'm just hoping that I would get a chance to look at it before it actually gets signed, or after it gets signed by WISP, before it gets signed by COCC. And I doubt if that's too burdensome. In fact, Peter, I think I would correctly attribute what he said is not burdensome to have a copy of this after they sign it, before the college signs it.
It is not burdensome, and we are happy to do that. We know that selling land, it's a permanent decision, and a 70-year ground lease is also, for all of our lives, is a relatively permanent decision. But that when you're selling it fee simple and it's transferring to someone else, it's a big decision, and we know that you want to make sure that it's done right, and we want to make sure that the college feels confident in the path that we're taking.
Yeah, and I don't see that as being overburdensome when we have, the final agreement prepared for review. I'm more than happy to either Jim to sit with you and go through it, or I see Paul on the call here. We could probably set up a call and go through it if that's okay with the rest of the group.
So to recap, the board has approved the sale. The terms of the agreement were listed in this presentation. Jim would like to read the contract, and Matt and Paul will work with Peter to have that happen. And we're moving forward.
I'm happy
Anybody
to do
agree with
that. And anyone else that would like to see it too, for that matter. I mean, it's a public document.
So, anything else we need to talk on this? I think we've talked it out.
We've over-talked it out.
It's a good
Okay.
discussion.
And I appreciate everyone's time. Thank you.
Do you need anything else from us, Peter?
No, we appreciate you, and we're excited for the next steps.
Okay.
Thank
So
you.
I see. Go ahead, Jim.
I was just saying thank you, Peter.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Peter. And tell Bill, thank you very much for his commitment to the we value it greatly.
Thank you. I will.
So
Thanks.
I see Laura has joined us. And I want to let Laura know that we moved the general principle board policy review to information. We held it back, waiting for you. You're here. And then we jumped the outcrop subdivision up to the first of old business. So we're not too far away from what the agenda really is as presented. So I'll bring up the next item will be the general board policy review, and Oliver asked to split the work that was in the packet into two parts. One, the retreat information is just there for our information. And then the other is the board policy review, which we are going to talk about right now. So Oliver.
Well, I will pass this right along to Laura, since she drafted this and can speak to it much more thoroughly than I can.
Laura.
Hey, thank you very much, everyone. And thank you, Oliver. I want to give you some thanks for keeping the policy review committee on task. I think we've made a lot of progress, and we've got a lot planned in the future too. And that's because you keep us all on task, and I very much appreciate that. So thank you for that. And thank you, Alan, for being flexible on the agenda. So this is GP5, or more correctly, a rewrite of GP5. And you all may recall at the retreat last fall, we discussed the fact that the Policy Review Committee was working on the GP5 and actually GP6 too, because in reading it, we had concluded that the policies we had around committees had not been updated in a very long time, and they bore very little relation to the way that we actually use committees. And furthermore, they bear very little relation to what best practices are generally regarded in among boards like ours. So the committee talked about it a fair amount, and we discussed the principles with you all at our retreat last fall. And then in preparation for that, I did quite a bit of research looking at material out there from organizations like BoardSource, who make recommendations to boards of what are the best ways to utilize committees, and reviewed Oregon law with respect to community colleges and with our obligations under public meetings and public records and such. And then I rewrote this, and Erica and Oliver and I then talked about it in the committee, and I made some more changes. And so this is the result of all of that work. I'd say it's probably almost a year in the making. And then Joe Krenowitz called me today with a question, and I think it's a good one. So I just wanted to highlight this. And I think that if we move forward with this, I would recommend that we make this change based on what Joe told me. And that is in section 2F. So 2F as in Frank. We talk about committees shall be subject to public meetings and records law in the same manner as regular board meeting. And then we say, including all laws regarding public notice, requirements around open meetings, minute taking and record keeping obligations, and requirements associated with recording. And, you know, I think after talking with Joe, I think that that's probably way more detailed than it needs to be. And I think that just needs to say that we are subject to all applicable open law meetings and record, or all applicable open records, meetings and law. All applicable open meetings and records laws with respect to the committee. And then, you know, it's our obligation to make sure that we keep up with whatever the law requires. But we know right now that that requires, you know, we have to have our meetings are open. If any member of the public wishes to join, they are welcome. We have to keep committee minutes. I believe that we have to record those meetings right now as well. But the law does change, and the point should just be that to the extent that it's applicable, we must comply with it, not to try to make specific statements right now about what those laws are. So that's my recommendation on that. Then the rest of this document is very much, I think, what we have aspired to do and the direction that Erica and Oliver and I heard from you or from the whole board at our retreat last fall, which is that we want to make sure that we have committees that are meaningful, but the committees ultimately need to be responsive to the board. And so we don't want the committees making decisions for the whole board. We want committees to take the time and use their special expertise to move matters along, but basically to educate the board and to, as one expert described it to me, to assemble all of the Legos and bring them back to the board and explain how they've assembled them, and you know, see if the board agrees or wants to, you know, move them around. But rather than having to have the whole board spend time on all of these things in great detail, committees can be a really good tool for doing some of the research and back work that's needed in order to inform the board. So with that, I guess I'll ask if folks have questions or comments, or we would love to do a first read tonight, but it's not critical. If folks would like more time to look at it, we just want to keep it moving and not forget about it.
Laura, my initial reaction is just to continue your analogy of Legos. I mean, as long as the Legos are not falling on the floor where I can step on them with my bare feet, that brings back incredibly painful memories that hopefully other people can associate with. But yeah, I'm okay with the first reading, and I'm also okay with waiting till next time.
Thanks, Bruce.
This is Joe Krenowitz. I'm fine with what you presented, Laura, with the adjustment in regards to the verbiage that you and I spoke about earlier. Once again, I got to lean on people who really are good at the work verbiage, good at the law, as well as understanding how it all falls together. My whole objective is let's make sure that we can do our job without being hamstrung with little details and get ourselves caught up in some challenges that we really don't need to address.
I have one question, and it has to go back to 2F. Now, I was on the real estate committee for a while, and there was information we discussed that it was like things that were business things, not public things. And so I think those were things that we would not have been able to talk about in the real estate committee because we wouldn't make them public. You know, it would be things
So
like,
Alan,
Yeah.
Alan, you're absolutely right, but that's part of saying that we're subject to all applicable open meetings and records laws. We would be allowed to do an executive session to discuss contracts. So it would be just done exactly the same way that the board does it. We would have to announce, we would put it on our agenda, we would announce that we're going to have that, and then we would close that part of the meeting to anybody except the media, and we would instruct the media that they are not permitted to report on what's being discussed. So it's would just parallel exactly what we do in our regular meeting.
I'm fine with that. Any other discussion?
Sorry, Laura, but I'm not understanding what's happening. I'm looking at the board packet under 8B.1. And where is all this talk about committees and public meetings and open records?
Jim, the revised draft GP5 was sent to you on Monday. We got our wires crossed, and Oliver thought I was submitting it for the packet, and I thought he was submitting it, and so that's why it went out on Monday. But I think you've just answered the question. If you haven't had a chance to review it, then I think we should just take this as an information item and bring it back to the March meeting.
Yeah, that program didn't register with me, sorry.
No worries.
As far as the 8B.1, are we talking about that also?
No, I think that's in the retreat document. So you need to
Just sort of an information item?
Yeah, it's just information item.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Alan, I don't have any problem with us wait until March, but I wanted to let you all know one other thing, which is that in our review of the policies relating to committees, we discovered that there's a separate, well, I think we all kind of knew, but we actually started thinking about it. There's a separate policy about the specific committees that we have and what their charges are. And that's something that we're working on redoing, but we think that's going to need to be the subject of a retreat in the future. Because what we realized is it's been a very long time since we've systematically looked at the makeup of our committees. You know, do we have the right committees? And do we need to eliminate some? Do we need to add some? And what do we really hope to get from each of those committees? Because the charges are not really clear. They're extremely abbreviated in the GP6. And I haven't been able to find any other place where they're spelled out. So that's another item to come in the future months.
Okay.
So
let's you work on that, and we will have that as one of our retreat items.
Before we move on, I just want to clarify this question of whether this is a first reading or not. Our current policy, Governance Policy 9, stipulates that the board will consider proposed new or revised policy twice. First as an informational item, second as a recommendation for approval. So I'm not sure that even if Jim didn't read this before tonight's meeting, this really needs to delay us from voting at the next meeting, because if folks are not in agreement at our next meeting, we will not vote to approve it, and we will continue to discuss and refine it.
I think you're right, Oliver. I think that's right.
Or
Hey, I retrieved it and I read it and it's fine.
Hey, I'd love to hear Paul Taylor weigh in on that. I mean, and again, it may be that the way Oliver and others are reading it, it sounds like it could both happen. But it seems to me the spirit is that it needs to be occurring on 2 separate meetings, and that may or may not be the case. But I'd love somebody to weigh in on that.
I don't know.
Fair
No.
enough.
See, because I don't know what it's going to be a question of what your policy is, and I haven't reviewed that. I don't know historically how you've operated. If the historic operation is based on an actual policy, or if it's just sort of been, that's the way we've always done it. But I'm happy to do that.
Well, it sounds like we can move forward with first reading. Does everybody agree with that? Seeing
Yes.
nobody say anything no, can we consider this to be first reading?
I agree.
Sure.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay. So we'll just move on. I don't think we need to, do we need to vote on first reading? We don't.
I don't think so.
No.
Not according to our policy.
Seriously? We don't have to
No.
vote on a first reading.
It's an
just-
informational, it's not even considered a first reading. It's considered, again, I will reread our policy. The board will consider proposed new or revised policy twice. First as an informational item, second as a recommendation for approval.
So technically, Bruce, it's not a first read in the legal sense. It's just our policies say we'll have an informational meeting with any policy changes at the first meeting, and then we adopt it. We can't adopt it at the same meeting.
It's more,
I'm fine with that. Just usually a first reading, there's kind of give and take. Staff might bring something or board and committees might bring something. There might be some minor tweaks, and then you get a chance for people to, then staff pretties it up and brings back the final thing. But that's fine.
Want to say something, Paul?
I was going to say that I typically viewed the first and second reading requirements more as providing additional opportunities for the public to be involved in the process.
Okay, so this is our first reading. Now, one challenge is that if the public needs to be involved or informed, it needs to be out there where they can, it wasn't in our packet. So if someone downloaded that, they didn't see this. So how do we manage that?
Well, it's now part of the record, and anybody who wants it can get it from Lori's office, and we're not adopting it until the next month. So I don't think we have a problem.
Somehow I don't anticipate we're going to get a lot of public comment on our policy around committee structure.
This is only scintillating to nerdy people like me.
Okay, well, thank you all. Let's move on to legislative update. Matt.
Alan, I think the reopening plan update is the first of the next 2.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Thank you. Reopening plan update. Matt.
And I'm going to work to share my screen to see if I'm doing this correctly. And tonight I'm going to be joined by Julie Downing and Charlotte Andreessen. Let's see if I can do this right. Are you seeing the February reopening update? Great.
Yeah.
So this is the required reopening update that the state mandates that you receive on a monthly basis since we're in the midst of COVID. There's not a substantial amount, but there's an important couple of items that we want to share with you. We'll be talking briefly about contract tracing continuing and how we're regularly communicating our updates to the campus and publishing, and then the vaccination subcommittee work. And the vaccination subcommittee work will be provided, the update will be provided by Julie and by Charlotte. So on our contact tracing continuing, you should know that just as the community, we continue to have cases, and Charla is doing a particularly fine job of doing that tracing. We are, I would say that we're probably thorough to the extreme, and making sure that we're getting in touch with those that are potential exposures and those that are actual exposures, and then of course those that have symptoms. But it's going well, and we're tracking that and maintaining privacy, but doing it in a very thorough manner. With regards to the regular communication updates, there'll be a little bit more about the vaccination updates, but you may have seen where the Oregon OSHA has put out a temporary rule that's going to become permanent as of May 4th, when the temporary rule expires. And so we were meeting as a reopening committee today and looking at the changes and what they'll mean for our communications. And then we're also anticipating change in our operation structure, the potential for change in our operation structure come the fall term. And so we're looking at updating our plan and communicating that to all that it would impact. Things like visits to our campus by potential students and their family. How do we operate that and do it in a safe environment? One of the questions that came up today was, what about our recruiters that are in the K through 12s in the high schools throughout the district? How do we ensure their safety and their behavior so that we can continue to move forward, both with recruiting, but honoring the safety precautions that are necessary? And there are regular updates provided throughout, and both on our webpage and direct emails and so forth. And then the third topic is the vaccination subcommittee work. And I'm going to look to Julie and Charla to take the lead on this communication. Julie, Charla.
Thank you, Matt. Charla and I are happy to be here, and wanted to kind of introduce you here to our committee of 8. You can see they represent various parts of the college. We do have 2 faculty on the committee, one of which is Emma Chaput, who is, she's kind of our vaccine science expert on the group, and that's proven to be very helpful in many cases. Her background is she was an infectious disease epidemiologist, so we're very fortunate to have her. Can you go to the next slide, Matt? So we're working on a number of different things, and just to reiterate, we are a subgroup of the reopening committee, so we do report back to the reopening committee. Right now, we've been working a lot on just educating our employees, trying to reduce hesitancy in regards to the vaccination when it comes their turn. So we've got a number of things we're kind of doing as a kickoff. Yesterday, I thought it went extremely well. I think others did too, based on the input that we're getting. At Lori's snack chat, we had a vaccine panel. So Emma Chaput, who I was just referring to, did a 10-minute presentation on the science of vaccine, followed up by Emily Freeland from Deschutes County, who did an update on kind of the rollout, where we're at in terms of with the state allocation. And then there was a Q&A session afterwards. So we were really excited to be able to offer that. Gosh, I think we had in the upper 180s, maybe 187 people that attended the snack chat. So it was very well attended, which we are excited to see. Also, we are doing a weekly email out to all employees, and Jen Kovitz has done a wonderful job. She's on this committee, as you know, the subgroup, of helping put those together. So just updates so that everybody feels like they're informed and knows what's going on in terms of our local vaccination efforts. So let's see. Also under education, Jen's group is actively using COCC social media channels to re-message content from both St. Charles and Deschutes County. So that's been wonderful. And also, once the students are eligible for vaccines down the road, I wanted to let you know that we do plan to involve ASCOCC, so student government, in that. In terms of the next bullet point, coordinating with other public health groups and OSU Cascades, some of the groups we're working with are the Central Oregon Emergency Information Network. We call the JIC, which Jen is on most all of these, is the Joint Information Center, the Vaccine Confidence Coalition, city officials, school districts, county health departments. So we're making sure we have all our ducks in a row, especially with OSU Cascades, that we're doing things at similar times and in similar ways. In terms of WikiUp Hall, Andrew Davis is undergoing a project right now where he is reaching out to other community colleges and universities to see what they're thinking of doing for the fall. Our application is open for the fall for the residence hall. And so what he's checking on is, are you planning to require the vaccine? Are you going to recommend the vaccine? So we're collecting data on that. It's not just the vaccine, it's also testing. Will these students be tested? And with the WikiUp Hall, we definitely are in partnership with Student Life and with PACE for legal advice. And then the last one under health career students, this is just, I wanted to kind of toot their horn a little bit. Our nursing students have been involved in helping with COVID-19 testing, and more recently, providing vaccination. So that's been pretty exciting to actually see our students being able to help in that effort. Let's see. Oh, and the other thing with those students, so not only nursing students, but also paramedicine students and soon to come medical assisting and farm tech students are being vaccinated by St. Charles because those students will be doing clinical rotations at St. Charles. And it is interesting to note that St. Charles does not require vaccination for COVID-19. They encourage it, but they do not require it. So I guess next slide, please, Matt. And so the last two things, I mean, as we know, things will change. I mean, they seem to change hourly, daily. So we will continue to stay abreast of what's happening with the state, local, federal, et cetera, in terms of vaccine. And lastly, we have been reached, Deschutes County did reach out to us about a possible future vaccination site at COCC. So we're looking into that.
Thanks, Julie, and the people that are working with you on the subcommittee, and to the task force. And you mentioned Jen and her shop, and Charla is the risk management person. So just in addition to the update every month, we want to thank the people that have continued to be on task and making sure that we are a safe and healthy work environment. That's the update for this month. Any questions?
And Matt, could I just step in here for a minute? I would be remiss not to thank you for your leadership of the reopening task force. This was a special assignment that you were blessed with last March. And it's a difficult assignment, frankly. As Julie noted, this is a rapidly changing environment. It takes so much attention to detail. And I think it's a particularly tough, reopening, vaccines, what should be open, what should be required. It's a tough situation. It kind of reminds me of another situation that Matt periodically finds himself in, which is deciding whether or not we're going to close the college because of snow. And you can never win when you make a decision about that. Somebody is always mad at you. And, I found this whole COVID situation to be kind of the same. And so Matt is always gracious about thanking all the folks who work on his team, and they've done a great job, and I'm very grateful. But we also need to make sure that we thank Matt for some really fine work. So thank you.
Thank you, Lori. That's very nice of you to say. I appreciate that. And I am going to, though, say I get to work with some amazing people. and they do amazing work. And it's not a burden. So, other questions?
Well, seeing none, thank you, Matt, and thank you for the whole team. I feel like we're in good hands. So thank you. Let's go on legislative update. You have that too, don't you, Matt?
I do. I do.
Oh, let's see, McCoy. Let's see, McCoy.
Yeah.
Who's
Yeah.
doing legislative update?
I know that you probably get tired of hearing, so I'll try and make it brief. The session is in full swing. It's different this year, and it's different, and yet they're doing a lot of things. And there's the economic forecast coming, and a number of community college issues, and then we're in the midst of CTE month. So first, the session began remotely, and it continues to be conducted remotely. And so Alan and others that are participating are doing it like we are tonight. And there's a true sense by all that something is being lost in our democratic process by not being able to be in person and not be able to have public hearings and contributions by those that would like to be there in person and express their views. And it's noteworthy because it is so unusual and it's hard to legislate electronically. Nevertheless, there are over 2,000 bills that have been introduced, and not an inordinately large number are impacting community colleges, but there are a number of them. The deadline for submitting new pieces of legislation is February 23rd. So the snake has eaten one frog, and another frog will be coming on the 23rd. And then the deadlines are much, much more limiting. And the process of actually grinding the sausage will commence forthwith. We should be paying close attention to the economic and revenue forecast, which I think is on the 23rd as well, maybe the 25th. The exact date doesn't, it eludes me right now. You may recall that the December forecast was pretty good, that the revenue to the state was much higher than initially anticipated. Well, we're anticipating the February forecast to be down $1.6 billion was the number that one of the legislators provided to us last week. That is attention getting. And maybe with the change in administration on the federal level, we'll see some bridge loans or bridge grants going out to the states. But it's hard to sort of build the foundation for the future on hope for money coming from the federal government. So we should pay very close attention to the forecast in February. There are a number of community college issues that I briefly wanted to touch on. And Alan, since you're deeply involved with OCCA, if I skip over something, and Lori, since you're deeply involved with OPC, please jump in and add to or correct if I misspeak. I want to point out that the OCCA website has been updated, and it is now a wealth of information with regards to legislation and activity by the Oregon Community College Association. They've also hired a couple of new people, and there's a concerted effort to get our message across to our legislators. And it's obvious. It's a much better structured campaign, and the tools that are being used are at a higher quality, higher level of communication and constant communications. One of the things that OCCA has purchased is Voter Voice Grassroots Advocacy. And it's a phone app, and I won't bore you with how to go about putting it on your phone tonight, but it really does keep you informed on a regular basis. It gives you the opportunity to reach out directly to the legislators as we get closer to many of the votes that we would like to have our representatives on board with. I'll be reaching out especially to the board members and asking perhaps if you would load this app on your phone to put you in a position to send that quick text to the legislators that you're familiar with, and certainly that have districts that cross over into your representative districts. But if you have a moment, go to the OCCA webpage and look at the voter voice app and download it on your phone. And I would say that to everybody else on the call on the meeting tonight as well, both to be informed and then to help express support or our opinion on particular legislative opportunities. Some of the early legislation that's of note for COCC, one is the boundary change, shifting North Lake County to Klamath Community College's district. Lori testified on that last week. It's non-controversial. We assume that the process will continue. There needs to be a work session in the House Education Committee, which is where the bill was considered. And then there'll be a vote on the House floor, assuming it's going to be passed, probably unanimously, and then move over to the Senate for a similar process. The timing on that is that if it can be done by March 1st, it could impact the 21-22 tax revenues to the tune of about $117,000. If it's beyond March 1st, then it may not make it in for that window of influencing our 21-22 budget. So we're paying close attention to that. Capital construction, we've been reauthorized, at least it's in the governor's budget, and it's in House Bill 5505, which includes all of the university and community college capital budgets. You recall that that's about an $8 million award to COCC that requires a match of equal amount, and we currently are looking at a Redmond building. The community college budget shows up for OCCA and Higher Education Coordinating Commission in House Bill 2907, and that ask number is $702 million. The governor's recommended budget is reflected in Senate Bill 5528, which is $641 million, and that's flat funding for the year. If you calculate the current service level, so assume that from year to year, it costs more to operate, even though it's called current service level. If we calculate current service level for the year ahead of us, that $641 million is about 4% shy of what the current service level would be. So in talking with our legislators, Lori and I have been meeting with them regularly. Some of them acknowledge that the beginning number may be 641, but there's lots of room, headroom to move to somewhere between that 641 and 702 million. And then a couple of other items worth noting is the common course numbering in Senate Bill 233. That's something that we are all eager to have embraced, and their support in the legislature. So we're hopeful that that will move forward. That would just make it easier for courses to be accepted for credit throughout all community colleges and universities in Oregon. And then the transfer of academic credits, something that community colleges have advocated for quite some time. We're asking for continued focus on that. You may recall that in previous years, there were bills that were passed that there are 3 program areas or 3 degree areas that per year we're looking at developing a transfer that would transfer to all universities from all community colleges. Some of that progress has slowed, but there's still a focus on that. And we know that there's great support at the Higher Education Coordinating Commission and in the legislature to keep focus on that. And then lastly, for community colleges, the Small Business Development Center funding has been cut substantially in the governor's recommended budget. We've gotten good traction with our legislators, and there's a concerted effort by all the SBDC offices around the state. And it's an interesting split of authority. They are part of COCC, but they are also part of the state Small Business Development Center organization. And so in some ways they have 2 masters to serve, but we're all on board in asking that the legislature restore the funding that the governor's budget has cut. And then for tonight, the last topic that I just briefly wanted to touch on was CTE month. and COCC's presentation. If we were going live, and I'm going back to the very first slide, if we weren't remote in the legislative session, we would be in the Capitol. But for one day this month, it would be CTE Day in the Capitol. And we would bring in a number of our programs. Last year we had massage therapy, welding. Michael Fisher, can you remind me other programs that we took over to the Capitol last year?
You said massage therapy, welding. Those were the two primaries. I'm thinking they may have been at last year. The year before we had a plethora of them.
I think we've also had nursing, manufacturing, but I think we had aviation one year. But it's a pretty hands-on and exciting day at the Capitol. Thanks, Michael, for that, for helping me remember. Well, this year, because we're remote, we are CTE month. And we have Workforce Wednesdays where each college will have one opportunity in the month to present. We last week provided a presentation on medical assisting. And Shannon Waller did an exceptional job. And Julie Downing they were both the first out of the gate, and I think they set the bar the highest. You know how they say either interview first or interview last? I think we did really well by going first, and we got great compliments back to us from other community colleges wanting to know what was the format, what's the structure, and they were going to be duplicating it. The presentation is recorded, and I think you've all had access to that. Jen just posted it again to our Bobcat community, but kudos go out to Shannon and to Julie, and they did ourselves proud. And this program is pretty amazing. Some of the tidbits that I remember from the presentation is that over the last 4 years, all of our students have passed the national certification exam, and all of our students have been employed. And that's a pretty good record. That's one that's hard to maintain. We have our presence in the Capitol virtually. And this is the beginning of the legislative game, and there'll be a lot more to come. So stay tuned. Alan, I know that you've been busy with OCCA, and I don't know if you have any additional observations. And again, Lori, if you have others to add, please do.
Well, I just have a couple. One is OCCA, they're tracking the bills. There are a lot of them out there. They have to have a hearing, then they have to move to the floor. A lot of them die. So right now they're just looking and monitoring a lot of them to see whether they survive or not. The other thing you might talk about is corrections. I think between Senator Dembro and the Higher Education Coordinating Committee, they have helped us keep our and the other colleges in the corrections, in the prisons to do the work that we're doing.
Lori, since you have been, if not point, maybe co-point on Department of Corrections with Betsy, could you speak to that?
Yeah. This has taken a village, and I claim no credit. Betsy, Jenny Newby, Jay Sklenar have attended numerous meetings. It's been kind of it's been a rough haul to come to this agreement, but it appears we're there, and we think that our folks, community colleges have expertise in the area of adult basic skills, and that we get good outcomes when we teach AICs, and that, the best way to combat recidivism is to educate AICs. So I have to give all the credit and all the patience to Betsy and Jenny and Jay. And the HEC really played a huge role, and a number of our legislators, in bringing this to a successful conclusion.
Thanks, Lori. Any other questions or comments for Alan, Lori, others?
So Matt, the scheduled forecast release date's the 24th.
24th.
Yeah.
I got both ends of that, David. The 23rd.
You did, you're right,
25th.
right in the middle, yeah.
But the important one is in May, and they won't do a lot of funding decisions until they see that one. And then it's a mad dash to the end to figure out who's in the budget and who's not.
Alan, you sound like you've been through this a time or two.
Lots of times. Okay, thank you, Matt. That was a very good presentation. You're still on the hook because next item is CTE month resolution.
And this shows up in the agenda intentionally right after us talking about the legislative activity, because this year, as I pointed out, OCCA is doing a little bit more. And what we're asking tonight is that the board approve this resolution identifying February as CTE month. You've had an opportunity to review this when it was provided to you in your packet. It is something that I can tell you that over the years that I've been going to the legislature, the dynamics of the conversation have shifted from us informing our legislators about programs, career and technical education programs, to them asking about the status and wondering about our graduates and wondering how much additional support we need. So we've turned the tables on the conversation of informing them to being one where it's how do we do things better and what resources do we need. And this is a resolution that when passed will provide to OCCA with the other community colleges, and they'll present it to our legislators.
So
Matt?
Yes.
Matt, this is Jim. I like the resolution. I think it's good. I would suggest, however, that you change a word under now, therefore be it resolved. I think board does proclaim rather than do proclaim.
I think yous may be right.
Thank you.
I'll accept any edits offered.
Okay, so we have the resolution in our packet. Jim just amended it a little bit. Is there any discussion on that? Do I have a motion to approve?
This is Laura. I'll
move.
Okay, so Laura moved, Jim seconded. How about that? Any further discussion?
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. Anybody abstain? So we've approved this resolution. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, everyone.
Next item is Meal of the Year update. Zach Boone.
Thanks, Alan. I'll be brief tonight. I just wanted to give everyone a little bit of an update on our changed event, as we will not be having an in-person celebration for Meal of the Year this year, which is, of course, a bummer, but we're fine. We'll roll with that. In your packet, I included a update of the invite that will be going out next week and mailing out to folks. And what we've done is we like to keep our acronym MOY, so we have changed Meal of the Year, which is now Menu of the Year. So we are offering donors with an actual menu of items to support scholarships at COCC. We decided many months ago not to do a synchronous event. There's just too many issues with running a live synchronous event. Wi-Fi being the first. If your Wi-Fi goes down and you're trying to live stream an event, well, you have problems. So with our board of directors and our fundraising committee and our great staff, we came up with this little bit of a difference. I think, again, you can see it in your packet, but just for the folks at home, I will share my screen here briefly. Earn my Control L, try to go to full screen. Can you all see that? Again, Menu of the Year. It's an actual menu that will be mailed to you, and you can order your delectable experiences through the end of March. We're excited with this raffle in our starters component of our menu. It's a $15,000 certificate donated by Webfoot Painting for some interior services. There's only 1,000 tickets available. We also have these fun wine tasting experiences and classes that are being taught by your own Laura Kraska-Cooper. We're really excited about that. Again, she does that already for our continuing ed program, but has really stepped up to provide that for our donors. Of course, our main entree, what we always hope folks can support, is our scholarship program. That's that portion of the menu. And our folks at the Cascade Culinary Institute, which always have a large role in Meal of the Year, are doing 2 live cook-along experiences, one offered by Chef Wayne Yeatman and the other by Chef Thor Erickson. Again, where folks can sign up. We'll have the 3-course meal kit and wine delivered to your door, and then you'll log in and go through an actual cook-along experience live with those 2 chefs. There's also a virtual wine grab, just to throw one more fun thing in there from our mystery cellar. And all those experiences will be available starting next week. So again, we're really excited about this. We wanted to keep the culinary theme. We wanted to keep the energy around our scholarship program. We've been really successful with this. This would have been the 43rd year in a row for Meal of the Year. So we're doing it just a little different, like everything else. We're pretty excited about it. So those will mail out to all of you next week. We're hoping that if you would like to take part in any of those offerings, you'll follow the instructions on the menu. And I just want to say again, not only a shout out and a thanks to Laura for helping with that, but for our team, the foundation team, who are not on this meeting right now, but for just rolling with it and changing the event. We've had to build a new website. We've had to get a little creative with our offerings, but we're really excited to present this to the community, and pretty excited about the raffle too. Happy to take any questions. I'll be back in April with a recap on hopefully all the great resources we've raised for the scholarship program. And thanks for your time.
So Zach, just so that I understand, the only food on this menu is the 24 Zoom session links available for one of the 2 sessions that we would pick up the ingredients and follow along with one of the 2 chefs.
That's correct, Oliver.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll actually bring you the ingredients right to your door. I know we can.
You're going to deliver them to me or to Joe?
Believe it or not, we know how vast our district is. We have some wonderful volunteers actually from First Interstate Bank that help us out with that. We've got a great crew. So yeah, we can get them to you or you can come pick them up.
I love it.
It's all about customer service. Thanks, Oliver.
Well, thank you, Zach. I remember a year ago, we were so fortunate to get the Meal of the Year in before the shutdown. And I think we were about the only ones who escaped. So
one of our prominent donors, Alan, says, yeah, that was the last event in town. So, and who knew at that time we wouldn't really be able to have it again this year, but we were very lucky last year to get that in. And we're excited to be able to offer this to the community this year.
well, thank you and good luck. And thank you, Laura, for stepping up. Okay, with that, we have board member activities. I'll start with Bruce.
Thank you. The main thing that I did was I had an opportunity to meet with Blakely Evans, who is the new Afrocentric program coordinator for the college, and it was great to get to know him a little bit better. I've become quite involved with a group locally here called the Fathers Group that has a very strong COCC presence. Marcus LeGrand, Kelly Musgrove, and Gordon Price are also on the board there. And it was just a great opportunity again to introduce myself and I think honestly, Blakely is going to he already is a rock star. He's so charismatic. I can hardly wait until, he's actually able to go into the schools, but I think people will really gravitate well with him. So that was a great hire. So that's what I've got.
Oliver.
Let's see. The only thing I really have to share is that I was able to watch the Jelani Cobb's presentation at the Season of Nonviolence event, which I thought was really exceptional. And again, Blakely did a great job in that sort of Q&A session. So bravo to those who were involved in putting that together.
Oliver, you had the policy review committee on January 15th also.
Yeah, I don't really enjoy going through my calendar and just reporting a list of events. So I just like to hit the things that were particularly, I think, impactful for me.
Joe.
I just had my one-on-one with President Chesley sometime in January, and that's it.
Jim.
As you all know, February is Black History Month. So I want to make a small contribution to Black history awareness. I was thinking about mayors of cities. It's been 54 years actually since any major city in the United States, before 54 years ago, no major city in the United States had a Black mayor. But starting 54 years ago, there came to be a number of Black mayors. And at the present time, if you look at the cities that have a Black majority in the population, over say 40,000 people, there are 21 Black mayors in the United States. But more interestingly, let's look at the big cities that have a white majority or a non-Black majority. There are 18 cities that have a Black mayor. So it would not at all be correct to say that no progress has been made. Everyone knows, and increasingly we all know, that a lot more progress needs to be made, but there has been significant progress when you have the residents of cities over 100,000 of them. 18 of those cities with a non-Black majority of the population have elected Black mayors. So that is really encouraging. And that is my small contribution for the day. Thank you.
Thank you. And I remember President Obama too fondly. Laura.
Yeah, before I go, I want to just kind of address what Oliver said, because I remember when I joined this board, I remember making a comment that it felt like when we went through board member activities, it felt a little bit like how I spent my summer. And someone actually said to me that you might feel like you're just reciting a bunch of stuff that is just in your date book. But to folks who work at COCC or attend COCC or public members, it really matters a lot to know that we're engaged and that we're devoting time and energy and that we care about what's going on in the college. And so that's, I think, I just wanted to share that, because I think for those who haven't been on the board as long, to understand why we actually do it is really helpful.
Thank you, Laura. Point taken.
And I'm not trying to shame you. I hope you know me well enough to know that. I'm just trying to.
I'm not saying I'm going to tell you what I did this summer, but I do take your point.
Fair enough. So I attended the policy committee meeting on January 15th. I had my one-on-one with President Chesley on the 22nd. I also attended the Jelani Cobb presentation, and I would echo everything Oliver said about that. I do, by the way, love, I mean, it's kind of a bummer not to see everybody in person, but having these things available online is fantastic if you might otherwise have difficulty making it to things. So I think that's just something we want to keep in mind in the future when we do go back to in person. To the extent we can still make things available online, it's just so great and convenient. Okay, and then on the 26th of January, I attended the foundation meeting, and that's how I spent my summer break.
Okay, this is how Erica spent hers. She's got a beautiful little girl. And I attended Tuesday OCCA legislative calls and calls between Erica, President Chesley, and myself on Fridays. On February 5th, we had the OCCA board meeting. I got appointed to the executive committee. It was unanimous because I voted for myself too. I'm also on the diversity, equity, and inclusion committee that they have to help roll that out to all 17 community colleges. I'm going to be on it with Christy Walker. She's there too. So I'll have some help making sure that I perform there. I've had calls to board members Oliver and Jim. And we have Kiwanis by Zoom every Wednesday. And today we had a Kiwanis meeting. We had College Now presentation by Caddy Mae Kuhn, and she did a great job telling us how we're integrating with our K through 12 schools and providing college classes and how they're moving forward. And I'll tell you, the Kiwanis members were really impressed. I also listened to the Jelani, Dr. Cobb presentation too. I thought that was great. And I've stopped at the Redmond Kids a few times and I found that really informative. So with President's report, President Chesley.
Thank you. I want to bring two, actually more than two folks into some conversation tonight. First, Alicia Moore is here with two special student guests. And in your packet, you saw that our college and our students were really fortunate to get significant funding from federal and state governments to help our students. And I thought that you might be interested in hearing a little bit about that and hearing from a couple of our students. So Alicia, please.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks, Lori. As Lori said, in your packet is a summary of all the different COVID relief or COVID-related aid packages that the college has been able to provide directly to students. There's other aid that's come to the college for institutional support, but the student one obviously has deep meaning for all of us since students are the reason we exist. And I had the great pleasure to meet two of our student award recipients and talk with them on the phone this last week or via Zoom this last week. And if they share just even half of what they shared with me and they share that with you, I know it's going to bring a smile to your face and absolutely be an inspiration. So I'm very happy to introduce to you Darcy Webb. Darcy, if you want to wave. Darcy is in our pharmacy technician program and started here in this past fall. She lives in the Kohler area, so is deeply connected to the Madras campus. And so we'll have her speak first. And then when she's done, we'll turn over to Shahela Evans. And Shahela is coming back to college to earn her AAOT with an emphasis in education. She also started this past fall, and she is a proud Bend resident right now. So it was just absolutely wonderful to talk with them and hear their stories and how these relief funds are directly able to help them in their education and pursue their goals and dreams. So I've asked each of them just to spend a couple minutes to share a little bit about their experience at COCC so far, their plans, and how the Relief Fund has been able to help them. So Darcy, if you'd like to kick us off. Oops, I can't quite hear you. All right, how about Shahela? We'll have you go first, and then when Darcy gets some microphone help, we'll have her speak.
Okay. So hi, my name is Shahela. I just started at COCC in the fall, as was mentioned. I'm from Arizona. I originally was from here. I moved to Arizona my senior year at Bend High School and then decided to come back. And so I am back as a resident in Bend. I restarted my life here, found my husband, got married, just recently had my cutie son, Landon, in April. And so that's kind of been my story so far. What I've really enjoyed with going to COCC is my mom had graduated from COCC, so that's why COCC was on my radar. And honestly, amongst all the hardships and everything that is bad that is happening in the moment right now, it was a moment for me to go back to school and to focus on my future and to work towards something that I've always dreamed of being, by becoming a teacher, hopefully someday. So COCC has helped me be able to stay in school. It's offered me the resources I needed to know what to apply for, people reaching out to me and helping me know those resources. And the COVID emergency fund was one of those resources that I never knew was there. And then I got an email and it's helped me. It saved me in a moment of a time where you could be stressed out. It helped with that relief, and it helped me pay my mortgage and feed my family and stuff. So it really helps the students, and we're extremely grateful for what you what the faculty and what everybody provides for us students that are stressed out with school, stressed out with everything. And we're just trying to go for our goals, and to have people that help us through it is just awesome, especially in times right now. Right now, COCC, I've super enjoyed just being in school, working towards my career that I hopefully one day want to get. I've been really impacted and influenced by my professors that I've had in such a short time. They've really touched my life, and they've really made me sure of what I want to be. I have my education teachers, Angie Cole and Jackie Vance, and they have just, their courses are so wonderful, and they've really helped me see, yes, this is what I want to do. Like, oh my goodness, this is amazing, and stuff. And it even gets emotional sometimes, because you're so sure when you're taking courses that this is what you're supposed to do and what you're meant to do. There's also two professors, Dominique Kongzil and John Licardo, that have pushed me to my limit, to where I was like, oh my goodness, I can't make it. And then they helped me, and I pushed myself to where I'm like, wow, I can do this. I can do this. And so the professors, the teachers, the faculty, everyone in COCC has just impacted my life in such a short time. And so I just appreciate it. My future is looking like I want to conquer getting my AAOT through COCC, and then in education. And then I hope to transfer to receive a bachelor's in education. And then even farther into the future, my ultimate goal is to one day hopefully receive and go for my PhD in education, so that I might be able to possibly become a principal one day. And so that's like my bunch all jammed into one. And I'm doing this for my son, I'm doing this for myself, and I'm just ready to conquer my dream, and COCC is helping me do that. And so I thank you guys, and I appreciate the honor of being able to speak. And I thank Alicia and even Melissa Heiss for helping me, have extra resources for scholarships to help me know for sure that I can stay in school, even through financial hardships. So thank you.
Thanks, Shahela. And one of the things Shahela downplayed when she was speaking, but was such a joy to hear from her when she and I first met, was talking about how for many, COVID is just a super challenging and stressful time. And for her, it's been a godsend to be able to refocus her time and energy, and it's really been a blessing. So that's a refreshing attitude to hear when I know many people are kind of hitting the wall with isolation and COVID related activities. So Shahela, thanks for refocusing my energy in a more positive way. So thank you so much. And Darcy, let's see.
Hear me now.
Perfect. Wonderful.
Okay, awesome. Sorry, I am joining you at the Madras campus is where I'm at tonight. I came up here right after work, and I am extremely nervous. I don't enjoy doing stuff like this. However, I don't see how anyone can receive such a life-changing program fund and not speak up and not say thank you. So I'm here tonight because I need to say thank you. I need to speak up and let you guys know how this has transformed my life. As she said earlier, I am in the pharmacy tech program, and I learned about that here in our local Madras Pioneer back in January 22nd of 2020. I had never heard about the program at all. I read this little article and I thought, I'm interested, I'm hooked. So then I went onto your website and I researched more, and I came across this, and I reached out to the instructor, to Stephanie O'Brien, and she was amazing. At that point, it was right before COVID hit, and I was actually able to go and visit with her in person. And she just said, Darcy, we're going to do this. I was worried about my age. There was a lot of barriers that I had to overcome. And she's just like, no, she goes, I'm going to make sure that we do this, that this is going to be successful for you. You're going to have a positive income and positive result from all of this. And she said 98% of the people that graduate from this get a job. So I'm like, okay, I'm in. And the first thing it says on here is it says, do you want an in-demand career where you can take pride in working directly with patients to deliver medications and provide excellent customer service. That's my heart. My heart is to help people. So I just felt like this was going to be a good connection for me. My daughter, Tessa, graduated from COCC in 2019 with an Associates of Science and Health Information Technologies. I saw how hard it was for my daughter to do her homework, and that was before COVID hit, and she was actually on the campuses. But because of our terrible internet connection, she had to stay there. She had to spend hours and hours and hours staying there trying to get her homework done. There was a couple times where she was tired, so she went ahead and she came home and she tried to do quizzes. Quizzes that took her 30 minutes at the campus took her over 3 hours at our house. It kept spinning out of control. It kept dropping. So I knew going into this program that that was probably going to be my biggest obstacle, was the internet. And especially now with COVID and so much having to be done at home. And I thought I had that all set up. I had a good friend and they have a basement, and they said, yeah, you can come set up down here. You can put your desk in the corner. We'll give you a key. You can let yourself in and out. I don't know what happened, but a week before I was to start my classes, they're just like, we've changed our mind. We don't think this is a good fit. We don't think this is going to be a good thing. And like I said, with COVID and the colleges not being open, here in Madras, they're open Monday through Thursday, but because I also have a full-time job, their hours are not really, I'm not able to come up here and study except after work until 8:30 at night. And so there was a huge gap. And that's where I read about the emergency fund. And this is when I applied. I applied for help to get internet service out at my house. It was an obstacle I couldn't overcome. It was $350 to have that satellite installed so that I could do my homework. It was beyond what I was capable of doing, and it was amazing. I got notification that I was accepted and that I would be able to have that installed. And so I've been up and running ever since, and it doesn't drop. I can do my assignments. I can do my midterms. I can, it doesn't, take forever to load or anything like that. It's just been great. And so I would like to just share a little bit with you. So because of my internet and that gift that was so valuable, this is my notification that I made the dean's list for the fall term. And this is my notification because of that I was awarded a scholarship, $4,500 scholarship, renewable for 2 years. I thought I was just going to finish up my pharmacy tech program at the end of the summer, but see, this has opened another door for me. I'm not quite sure where I'm going to go with this or what I'm going to do, but I have another full year of school available to me that I can take advantage of. And I want you guys to know without this, I couldn't have done it. I don't know how I would have got my homework done. I probably honestly would have had to have dropped out and maybe tried at a different time. And so these funds are life-changing, and I wish more people would have come forward to let you guys know that we need you, that it takes all of us working together for us to be successful. And I thank you guys for that.
Thank you, Darcy. I mean, the two of you are just so inspiring to hear your stories, such different backgrounds, but I love the fact that both of you have a family connection to COCC. Darcy, whether that's your daughter or Shahela, your mom, that's just an amazing family story. And I see someone on our screen even getting a little teary out of that.
Well, you guys are amazing, and we can't do it without you. And we wanted to speak up and just thank you from the bottom of our hearts. This was life-changing for the both of us.
And I know, Darcy, you were super nervous tonight, but amazing job.
Super nervous.
Hearing your story.
Thank you.
So for our board members, any questions for Shahela or Darcy?
This is Oliver. Just a couple of comments. Darcy, I just want to tell you that when you graduate and get your pharmacy tech, is it a certification or a license? Yes. We have them embedded in St. Charles Medical Group across our clinics. And I just want you to know that even if you end up taking a role where you're not directly interfacing with patients, it makes the work that our farm techs do makes such a tremendous difference to the physicians, advanced practice providers, medical assistants, and nurses that are doing the work for the patients, that it's the work you do is really impactful. So even if you end up in a place where you're not directly working face to face with a patient, you are providing patient care, and it is meaningful. Shayla, I don't have a question for you necessarily, but you did mention that you found out about some of these resources through an email, and that triggered a memory. Lori, in one of your board updates, you mentioned that there was a big spike in engagement with our Thrive program based on some email being sent out. And now this is making me curious, how are we getting word out to our students about the resources that are available to them?
We use a ton of different resources, Oliver. Certainly email is the default one, but Jen's team does a really amazing job with social media. We post things in Blackboard, which is our online learning management tool. If there's quick turnaround time information, like around some recent opportunities provided through Thrive, we've even sent a text. So we use all the communication mediums we have in front of us.
Cool.
And thank you both for sharing. This does warm our heart. It helps us move forward with more conviction to just do the job we're doing. So thank you. We really appreciate it.
And thank you very much.
Thanks, Shahila and Darcy. You're welcome to stay if you'd like to hear the end, but I also understand you both probably have homeworks by the sound of it. So
yes. Thank you. God bless you guys.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Wow. That was awesome. And I'll also just add, we are incredibly grateful for the funds that we've received, government funds that we've received. But I'll also say that sometimes figuring out the guidelines and the rules for distribution is a changing target. And it's kind of a tough puzzle to piece out. And I know that Alicia and her staff, Brianna Sylvester in financial aid, just did a lot of heavy lifting to get that money out as soon as possible. So kudos to them as well. I also want to introduce Michael Fisher. He is one of our instructional deans here at the college. And one of his departmental areas of oversight is manufacturing. And he got drafted into a special assignment because only recently did we hire a new grants coordinator. And when the opportunity to go after a Department of Labor Strengthening Institutions grant came up, and the state, the other presidents wanted to put in a consortium application, I thought, huzzah, we need to do this because we think we have great potential. We think we have a great program now, but we think we also have great potential to make that program even more relevant in our region and especially in Redmond. And so I said, Michael, you're now a grants coordinator, and he stepped right in. And it's a very competitive grant, and I'm grateful to my colleagues across the state, and I'm really grateful to Michael for rolling up his sleeves on this one. And so I asked him to share a little bit more detail about that grant with you tonight.
All right, thank you, Lori. And I hope that you've all seen something of this grant due to Jen Kovic's great work of getting it out there in so many different, formats. And we got some great attention on this grant when we got it, when we were putting in for it and when we got it recently. And I wanted to thank Jennifer Peters and Zach for their help, and they were very helpful in keeping things in line and keeping us on task. And boy, this was just a get after it kind of program. It's a consortium based grant, and there was a lot going on very quickly. And so it was super helpful to have multiple eyes on the different stages as we were working through this. Also, we had Joe Huddleston, our MATC, our manufacturing program director, helping out. Jack Stearns, a new welding instructor, and Mike Perry, a new machining instructor, giving their input and helping guide how we might use something like this. The focus of the grant is basically strengthening career pathways. And with that, it's focusing on the two areas of advanced manufacturing and cybersecurity. And then at the statewide level, the way that that kind of breaks down into strategies, these strategies were really kind of focused on response to COVID. I don't know if when this was thought of as a brainchild to go after this grant, if COVID was in the mix at that point in time, or if after they started maybe applying for it, they said, gosh, we've got COVID out here, let's make sure we make that somewhat of the focus. And if that was the case, it was, I think, a pretty solid move on their part to think of doing it that way. So how do we strengthen these pathways? We talk about investing in infrastructure, basically to facilitate online and hybrid delivery of some of these CTE courses, and trying to figure out how to make the going to the edge of the non-skill-based portion of our skill-based programs, and taking that material and making it available online in a hybrid or otherwise online type format. Making that and working that through with cybersecurity as well, and learning pathways. Creating and promoting stackable credentials. And so this ties it directly to the employers out there, and going, okay, how can we make it that different stages along the way, people can in a sense kind of jump ship for their betterment to get out there and get employed at whatever level that might work best for them and for the employers that are seeking them. Then we've got the aligning. This is kind of an interesting one that was put on there, but aligning policy and procedure around issues of credit transfer. And we heard some issue. We heard the topic of credit transfer brought up earlier in the board meeting. And in the CTE world, that's always been a challenge. If we think it's a challenge in the transfer world, in the CTE world, I think it's dramatically intensified. You know, you take these very localized units where people are building CTE programs to meet their local needs, and then say, all right, you all get together at a state level and come to agreement with your curriculum, make it look similar, and have your outcomes look similar, and that kind of thing. And it gets pretty challenging. So this is a pretty reasonable lift of the grant as well. There's 9 colleges in the grant. Mount Hood Community College is the lead. Rogue Community College, Chemeketa, Clackamas, Portland, Klamath, Southwestern, and Lane are our other partners in the grant. The grant's a total of $5 million over a 5-year period, and we'll be looking at about, we have direct access to $80,000 a year, and we have access to other monies in the grant as well, depending on what we put forward as a discussion gets further along. We're going to focus on our part on that, on manufacturing, on advanced manufacturing. And with that, we're looking to use the money to help purchase equipment, do some curriculum development, and then training to go along with both of those other two. An example of that is a certified welding inspector course that we'd like to get one of our new faculty members, Jack Stearns, involved in order for him to be basically, you know, I'd say state, but really even a regional, beyond state level resource as a welding inspector, where people would come to COCC and seek him out as somebody that could basically certify them in the welding arena to go out and be professionally certified as they approach their trade. Other areas that this has some kind of cool crossover is that we've got the opportunity to put in for an AWS, or American Welding Society, grant. And you can leverage, as most of y'all know, you can leverage one grant against the other. And this gives us an opportunity to be much more successful in pursuing one of those grants, and probably potentially multiple AWS grants on each year. Also, we were partnered up with the Oregon STEM Hub, and they're going after Oregon Community Foundation Ignite grant. And that one has a focus, has a 3-pronged approach, but 2 of those prongs just happen to be manufacturing and cybersecurity. and working to serve underserved, to bring in and recruit in underserved populations, primarily at the K-12 level, but we're working with them. This grant works nicely as a wraparound there as well. Partners that we're connecting up with via this grant or via this grant, our industry partner is CV International. It's a Redmond located business. Cool side story to that is the early owners, I believe it was back in 2013, of that company started up with their company, basically started it up using our SBDC, our Small Business Development Center, to get that going. And they are currently right now back in the SBDC program, the Small Business Management Program, where they're starting up a new business and using one of our esteemed program directors in the SBDC, Jim Wilcox, to lead them down that path. We're also connecting up with East Cascade Works, High Desert Education Service District, and Redmond Economic Development. And that's pretty much what I have for you in a nutshell. It's 5 minutes to 8 o'clock. So any questions?
Thank you, Michael. That was great. I know that I talked to Joe. He's all excited. This is what we need to help improve our CTE program. So I'm excited.
We're pretty excited in a painful kind of way to be jumping down this path as well. There's some, you careful what you ask for, and this is a little bit of that. It should open some real good opportunities that we might not otherwise have had in front of us.
Thanks, Michael. And that is the president's report.
Well, thank you, Laura. So on the agenda, we have 3 meetings to consider. The 5th of March for policy review. March 10th will be our next board meeting, and March 30th will be the Student Success Committee meeting. Look forward to those. So with that, we are going to be prepared to adjourn into executive session. So all you on Facebook and who are not needed to attend that, thank you for coming, and we'll say goodbye to you. And with that, I'm going to read the statement. The board will now meet into executive session. The executive session is held pursuant to ORS 192.660, Section 1, Subsection D, labor negotiations. Representatives of the news media and designated staff are allowed to attend the executive session. However, as a reminder, the news media are specifically directed not to report on any deliberations during the executive session. Under the provisions of the Oregon Public Meetings Law, the proceedings of this executive session are for background information only and not for publication or broadcast. So with that, Jen, are we ready to go? Okay, well, we're out of executive session. The board's back in regular session. Are there any comments or things for the good of the order? Seeing none, I'm going to adjourn this board meeting and thank you all for attending. Bye.